episode of Stoke Meter, and we have the pleasure of having Justin Batt on our show today. Now, Justin is one of the coolest people that you could ever meet, and quite frankly, it's the first time we've ever met in person like this. But Justin is an author of a book called Daddy Saturday. He is also the father of four, and he's a publishing disruptor. He's a TEDx speaker. He is a Spartan Racer. Now, I can't wait to get into some of that stuff. He's a farmer. He's also a massive Clemson fan, having gone to school there. But it is such a pleasure to have you on the show, Justin.
Man, it's so good to be here. Thank you all for having me, and what an introduction. I appreciate that.
You got it. Well, it's neat because I came across your story on the thread of another friend named Sean Reyes. And Sean is the Attorney General for the state of Utah, for those that might not know. And he was so enamored with everything that you had to say at a conference that you folks were at, but especially in light of fatherhood. And it's such an incredible topic. I mean, I'm a father, and I forgot to introduce you to Gary. Gary's a father. But what led to this amazing work that you've been doing? And I can't wait to get my hands on Daddy Saturday, because I've read the intros and everything has been so fantastic. But explain a little bit of how you got on this journey of fatherhood.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, it's unique because everybody has a father, right? Everybody has a father story, and everybody also has a father wound. And in fact, you mentioned our friend Sean Reyes. We're at this fundraising event for Sean, and ironically, the entire conversation had a theme of fatherhood. And it wasn't planned, it was organic. It just naturally happened. And there's the people in the room that knew what I did are all looking at me going, like, are you kidding me? Right? It's all about fatherhood. So it is a central theme in most of our lives, but it's also the largest epidemic in our world is fatherlessness. And most people don't know that. And, I was just a young dad trying to be a good husband to my wife and to my newborn daughter at the time. And my wife was a teacher. She left teaching, went into the bridal industry, and she said, I want to start a business. And I'm like, I'm going to support you. And she came back and said, babies are bridal. And I said, I love it. You have birth, you have death, and you get married in between. So I like the model. Let's go with the bridal thing. So she did. We named it after our daughter, Hayden Olivia. And that's now been 15 years ago that she opened that bridal store. And it caused her to work every single Saturday. And she's wearing all the hats. And I'm at home with our little daughter, Hayden Olivia, and then add 3 boys to the mix. I'm a corporate dad. I'm stressed out. I'm tired, working all week, coming home on Fridays, waking up on Saturday with what I call the dad hangover. And it's just like, I got 8 or 10 hours with these kids. What do I do to have fun, to be engaged, and to just have my sanity as a dad? And, I had given up my weekends. I'd given up golf. I'd given up all those things to support my wife and also to be there with my kids. But we just weren't having these, epic days. And God smacked me upside the head and goes, literally, Justin, blessing or burden, inconvenience or assignment, it is your choice. What are you going to do with this time I've given you with your kids? And I said, okay, I got my marching orders. And so I began to do research, and I call it R&D, which is rip off and deploy. And I would go to YouTube, and I would, search the internet like for 15 minutes. I'm not talking, hours. And I'd find a fun challenge or game or an idea of what we could replicate in our own backyard or in our community. And I began doing this with my kids on those Saturdays. And we planned these adventures and these activities. And it wasn't all day, but we do a couple of things. And it just became super engaging and intentional. And like everything changed. The relationship, the dynamic, our time together. I mean, they're like falling asleep on the couch at the end of the day because they're so worn out. So am I. It was just great. And, those days became super special for us. And my kids would begin looking forward to Saturday. And so midweek, they'd go, Dad, what are we doing on Saturday? And one of those Wednesdays, my middle son, Mason, goes, Dad, what are we doing for Daddy Saturday? And that was it. I said, we're naming this, we're claiming it. And so Daddy Saturday is what it began and what it became. And we continued. We started putting our videos on YouTube, having fun. And then about 5 years ago, I had a colleague who said, Justin, you're speaking professionally all the time. And, you're a great speaker. you should use your talents and do a TEDx. And I'm like, what would I do a TEDx on? And well, fatherhood, right? And fatherlessness epidemic. And I learned about the 20 million kids in America who don't have a biological dad in the home, the millions more who have a physically present but emotionally absent father. And it just lit my heart on fire. And I was like, this is it. This is my calling. I've been given a solution that can help address both sides of that through Daddy Saturday, through intentional fatherhood, through creating epic experiences with your kids, and also mentoring kids that don't have a father figure in their life. And then I wrote the book and launched the platform. And, we'll get into what it is today, but that's how it all started. It was just me being an intentional dad with my own 4 kids in our own backyard, in our community, and making a difference in my own family by supporting my wife. And it was nothing more than that. And God's taken it to what it is today.
Unreal. So one thing that you said, just like, boom, it was like a right hook. It's like physically present, emotionally not. And there's been times I've been glued to the TVA. There's sports, there's justifications, and all that good stuff like that. I would have to say sometimes that's even worse than not being there, on my part anyway, because it's like there's no connection with pops and such. How do you break that cycle? And I look at, so you get this bad boy right here. And those of you that aren't watching it, I have my iPhone up. And then it gives you how many hours that you spend on average a day. Like, oh, dang. How do you break that cycle? What are some of the tips that you would give to fathers that are in those circumstances that might not be aware that they might be having that impact?
Well, I think awareness is key, right? And so we have to be aware of our practices and our self-awareness, and also our others' awareness. Like, and are we engaging in our phone, or are we distracted? Are we trying to finish up those emails, right? And there's times where, look, I'm completely complicit and guilty in this, even though I'm in it all the time. Like, I still fall prey to it too. And so that's part of this, is my failings, sharing those with the world so that they can see how to not fall into those themselves. And I think what I found is that, Maurice, one of the big issues is that, one, this is designed to ensnare us, right? This is designed to distract us and to engage us. And people are spending millions of dollars or billions of dollars rather, and neuroscientists are formulating social media and just the, email, like we're all chained to it like a ball and chain. And it's so challenging, right? And so I think the first thing is awareness, and just saying, how much am I using my phone? And am I separating my phone, or separating my engagement from my family when I'm in those times? So dinner time, breakfast, when I'm at home, am I present in the room? Am I actually listening? Or even worse for me is, I may not have my phone, but my mind, I'm still doing a business deal, or I'm creating something in my head while I'm sitting there with my family, right? And so that's not okay either. Like, it's being fully present and being there. And what I found is that far more is caught than taught. And so this is also really, really important, because how in the world can we sit there and yell at our kids and say, get off technology? You're spending too much time on that video game, or you're scrolling social media, and then we're doing the same thing ourselves, even if it's, we're looking at, doesn't matter, right? They're going to absorb what they see from us far more. And then we're being very hypocritical, obviously, if we're calling them out on it, and then we're doing it ourselves. So set the example first. That's the number one thing. So have the awareness, set the example. And then secondly, like, set boundaries. And I am very systematic and process driven in the way that I routine and the way I run my life. And so, like, if it's on me, it's going to be an issue. I don't have an Apple Watch. I do for working out. Like, I love that when I go for runs and things like that. It's great. So you don't have to carry your phone, but like, I don't wear it all the time because it's a distraction. Like, you see people, they're looking at their wrist every 2 seconds when it vibrates, and it becomes a habit. And you're breaking the focus, you're breaking the engagement. And so that's one. And then I think the other one is to actually go the opposite direction and create those moments of engagement by being intentional. And so we'll use time that is typically downtime and make the use of that. So 2 great examples are at dinner time. You can just have a random conversation. My kids get in, the boys, they'll slam down the food as fast as they can, and it's like they're up and gone on the table. And it's like, we just missed a moment as a family together, right? And so we'll sit down, and we have the table topics is one example, family edition, and it's questions. And so we'll ask these questions out, and everybody around the table will answer the questions. We have failure Fridays at our house, where we'll sit down at dinner and we talk about, what'd you try this week and what'd you fail at? And then we celebrate failure. And it's like, what'd you learn from it? And we support each other and we move forward together. And dad's right there in the mix, right? And maybe it is technology, right, that you're talking about in that moment. And hey, I wasn't present, Wednesday night at dinner, and I was on my phone. I know I had a big project, and I'm sorry, and I got to get better, and I need you guys to help me. So here's how we can do it as a family. So that's important too. And then the other piece of that would be like car rides. Man, when you're in the car with your kids, it can be so easy just to listen to music or to zone out or not be engaged. And so we play would you rather conversations, and you can learn so much about your kids when you go down the rabbit hole of would you rather, right? Would you rather marry a girl from the north or the south? Would you rather have a blonde or a brunette? Would you go to school? Would you go to college or do a trade? Like, just asking them all these questions, even at a young age, you learn so much, and it helps form their critical thinking process. It can be super engaging. And then the last one would be, we do something called driveway devotionals. And heavy day hump day we become famous for online. And I make my kids carry sandbags. I should say I make them. I used to make them. Now they do it on their own. They want to do it. But we carry sandbags down our hill. It's about a quarter mile down and back. And it's a very steep incline at the top. And they do something hard at the beginning of their day. And they are able to then say, when something comes up in my day, I've already done something hard. I've overcome that, so I can overcome this. And it's building that resiliency, working out that resiliency muscle every single day. And then we have a devotional, we talk, we're just engaging with each other, and I'm fully present in that moment. And it's like 8 or 10 minutes. And I'll tell you, my kids remember all of those moments. They remember those conversations. They're repeating, I'm hearing them repeat what I'm saying to other people, and it's sinking in, where normally in many circumstances it's not. And I believe that you got to serve together, struggle together. That's a big part of that as a family. And if you put yourself through those hard moments together as a family, then you can come through that. So like getting outside, getting engaged, using that downtime strategically for intentional moments, that's how I'm competing against and fighting against the technology and the draw to be not engaged.
Yeah. I am feeling like an utter not failure, but like, oh my goodness gracious, there's so many things I've not been doing, right? So simple things. And Gary, I'm sorry I cut you off, man. Gary's a fantastic father. You gotta chime in here.
Oh, no worry. So two things come to mind. The first one is, I don't know if you remember the movie Parenthood back in, I think it was like 1969.
Yeah.
One of my favorites part of that whole movie is Keanu Reeves, where he's kind of the backwards boyfriend or whatever. And I won't say the exact quote because it's a little crass, but the gist of it, he says, is you need a license to buy a dog, to drive a car. You even need a license to catch a fish, but they'll let anyone be a father. And I think that's actually pretty profound. And like you said, I've always said a huge part of fatherhood is showing up. And I think that ties into what you say. It's not just physically. Yeah. It's, are you emotionally present with your kids? But the thing I think that, you guys touched on social media and phone use and technology. I want to shift a little bit, because I think a big issue with fatherhood in our day and age now is incompatible or mixed messaging. And what I mean by that is, if you look at go to YouTube and you say, okay, I want to be a success, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to be the best corporate whatever that I want to be. It's like, okay, you work 80 hours a week, you do this, but it doesn't give you that balance of being a good father. What's kind of your views on that, Justin? Because to me, that's almost a bigger challenge than even the distraction of technology.
So that is a very, very astute point. And it's something that I work on myself all the time. And I see a lot of men really struggle with. One of my biggest platforms is LinkedIn, and it's really engaging that entrepreneurial or executive father, right? Who's managing that tension between work and home and having a hard time doing it. And I think that's where number one is that you have to realize that the whole equation of like balance, work-life balance, to me, it's a myth. It doesn't exist. It's work-life tension. It's always going to be there, right? And you got a kid who's sick at home, you have a problem, something's going on, like that tension starts to tighten towards the home front, right? Or you got a big project at work, or there's a promotion, or a new job, or you move, or whatever it is, right? it starts to tighten towards that side for a while. And you're going to go back and forth. And the point is just don't ever over-index on one side too much. And it's the constant act of, vacillating between work and home. But at the same time, it's your priorities, right? And it's like, for me, if you're winning at work, but you're not winning at home, then you're not winning. I say that all the time. And if you're winning at home, what you find is that you're much more likely to win at work. I don't have the studies to prove it, but I have the personal example, and I've seen lots of other people that I've coached and helped do that. And because they become better husbands and more engaged fathers, they start killing it on the work front, and then they manage their time better across the board. So I think it is a huge issue. I would also say that one of the big things that I found is that when you think about our society, right, the myth of success and what success is and the standard that people are putting out there, to your point, it is so false. I'm so tired of the people putting the private jets and the Lamborghinis and they're standing beside that they don't even own, that they probably rented, or it's in a parking lot, or they just snuck into the aviation terminal, right? Like, it's so false. And we have a whole generation of young men in particular coming up that have this misplaced ideal on what success looks like. And so the shift for me is success to significance. And that's the shift you have to make. And that is what I'm trying to do. And we're launching a whole new company called Best Man Media. And it's a hub and spoke model, with the ideal being that for manhood and fatherhood, we help people make that transition from success to significance. And we look at the qualities of what that means and what that looks like. And part of that is being the best in all areas of your life, right? And the buckets that we have are faith, family, fitness, and finances. Finances comes last. It's important. We were called to be providers, right? We're called to support and secure and do those things for our families, but not at the expense of the first three.
Yes.
And I think,
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go
I
ahead.
was going to say real quick, it almost sounds to me like, and I've seen this in my life too. It's when I become too siloed, where when you don't recognize that all these things are intertwined intimately to where you can't separate them. You know what I mean? When I look at it that way, it becomes much easier for me to look at the whole picture and not focus too much on any single part, whether it's work or working out or whatever it might be. Like you said, when you start balancing that tension and you're not siloed, that seems to be when I'm most successful. Go ahead, Mo. Sorry about that.
No, that is fantastic. And it is all about that balance. And there's something in that discussion that you had mentioned. You put faith, then family, then fitness and finance. It's almost like a sequential order. And in this time, it's easy to forget that faith aspect of it. And not to be all kumbaya-ish, but I want to hear your perspective, because I've known that it's had a profound impact on my own life. So how does that, putting that first before family, impact everything else?
Such a great question. And so I'm a Christian, and as a Christian, right, I believe that God's word's all contained in the Bible, and it's his love letter to us, and it's everything we need to know is all in there. Right. And so we talked about how you can get a license for everything else, but anybody can be a father, right? So if you want to be a better father, where are you going to go learn, right? And the only source that I know that is the complete truth and speaks more to significance and success like we're talking about is the Bible. And so I start my day there, right? I spend my time in God's word. I do a devotional every morning, and then I do an exercise from a dear friend, a guy named Bob Bodine. He wrote a book called The Two Chairs. And 2 chairs is you sit in one chair, you invite God to sit in the other. It's 5 minutes. You talk for 1, you listen for 4. Listening is like, it's not just sitting there. It's hey, Father, I'm having a really hard time with this right now. I yelled at my kids last night. The tension between work and home is too much. You know the situation. You got a good plan for me, and it's not too big for you to handle. So I need your help right now, right? And you listen, and that goes through that process. I try to do that every day. I get that download first. Gives me my operating marching orders for the day, and I have a foundation to fall back on. And I think that right now we're in a society where we are being blasted with everything but the truth from so many angles. And so for me, that's where I find my ultimate truth. And then I really work hard at also, I think this is, if I give one thing for men, believers or non-believers, there's 2 things you can do. One is our culture today, right? They're throwing so many things at us. And so it's like, how do you formulate your worldview today? And for me, it's forming a biblical worldview. So I look at everything that's going on in society, and then I'll take those bigger topics and I'll apply it against God's word, and then I'll formulate my biblical worldview on that topic, so that if I'm asked a question about my kids, or I have to answer that publicly or whatever that is, I've got a worldview that's been formulated. I can answer that question. And I think that's super important for dads, especially in your home, because your kids they're going to find out this information from something. They're going to ask these questions from someone. And so, if you're not rooted in that and grounded in that, then where are they going to get their information from? And as a father, it's one of the most important things you can do. Also, reading Proverbs. A dear friend told me years ago, I've been doing this for 15 years now, but it's reading a proverb a day. And there's 31 proverbs, 31 days in most months. So it aligns really well. Read a proverb a day. Solomon is the wisest and wealthiest man that ever lived. Why would you not want to learn from him? Christian or not, set your faith aside. Why would you not want to learn from him, right? And so many books have been, Napoleon Hill's books. I mean, there's many that have been written based on Solomon and his wisdom. But you do that in 2 years of doing that, you'll be smarter than your parents, your boss's boss, and most people around you have more wisdom. And it's true, right? And it's not like, hey, I'm smarter than you, but it's that you've been given wisdom that exceeds what human nature is allowing. And so I think that's part of that transition from success to significance, right? Is gaining that wisdom to lead well as a man, as a father.
Yeah, I've got to chime in on that one, because I have seen so many people from multiple different faiths and backgrounds, and when they have that aspect of it, as corny as it may sound to the modern world, right? There are those principles, and everything that's based on those different principles. It's amazing what it does to the individual themselves. So I'll give you, for instance, I'm glad that you said that the faith and then family. I've had some just grand old battles with my wife as far as arguments and such, and just, I don't particularly like you today. Right? But then the interesting thing is when you relate back to the scriptures, it says, love God first, love your neighbor second. Your closest neighbor is your wife, or your family. And it was funny because I don't have to like you in order to do something that shows my love for you. It's very profound, because I've seen how that plays out. And I've had, and most recently, I was in a coaching dispute, right? And I was a jerk, no doubt about it. I should have went about it a different way. And I look back at that, and even though there's not that like there, I would still do it because of the first principle, right? Love God first. So you're going to bound yourself to something that is there. And I appreciate that. I guess it's a form of vulnerability, because you're giving way to a principle that normally everyone says, no, go take it out on them. You're justified in being this way or that way because they're that way. No. There's a different path to it. But anyway, I digress. I just found that very fascinating, the way that you had mentioned that. So I thank you. But
no, thank you.
Yeah. But Garrett, you're over there. Every time he has this, he's thinking about something. So Garrett, go ahead, man. I know you got something there.
Well, I would just be curious to see what message do you provide people that say that aren't religious, that don't see the Bible as the as their primary focus, because there's definitely other ways to get through life. But I do agree with you. I think it's important to have some sort of anchor or something that you base your worldview on. So with your organization, with the people that you talk to, what are some of those things that other people can latch onto and use as an anchor? I know you said that even if you don't, if you aren't religious, you still can read you can read the Proverbs. There's still great lessons that can be taken from those words. What are some of the other things that you think are good things for people to latch onto?
Yeah, I think one good thing is that, as I mentioned in the beginning, right, we all have a father, and we all have, if we're a human, if we're on this earth, we have a father, and then we all have a father wound. And most people are not willing to either look at that father wound or uncover that. And it's one of the reasons why, even into adulthood, many of us still have trouble today. And I'm happy to share mine. I'm very transparent about it. I've talked to my dad about this, and we've had a lot of healing around it. But I was an athlete growing up, and my dad came from really rough circumstances and just, was abused and had a hard time as a child. And I'm so thankful for everything he gave me. But one of the things it created was some insecurity and some identity challenges with him. And so, he gained his identity through my performance in the field. And when I came off the field, it was very results based in how I received love and affirmation from my father. And so, he would give me love and affirmation based on my performance. And if I didn't perform well, there's times where he wouldn't talk to me, or he would like almost be disgusted with me, or he wouldn't even be at the house. And I'm like, it was a football game. Like, Dad, like what's wrong? Or he'd talk about the one tackle I missed, or instead of the 100 I made, right? And that kind of a thing. And so he was an awesome dad, but that was one thing that was a father wound. And early in my 20s and even into my 30s, I was a striver. I'm a driver achiever anyways, but like I was seeking that kind of love and affirmation from men, the success that I thought I was supposed to go after. And it was all wrong. And like, had I not been able to pivot that, I'd have climbed this wrong ladder, and who knows where I'd be at this point in life. I know I wouldn't be where I am today. And so again, regardless of whether you're a religious person or not, or have a belief in a faith, like that's a principle that we all need to look at. And there's a study called epigenetics, and epigenetics is the basis that far more is passed down to us than just our DNA. And that, you look at the environment, the experiences of your parents, your grandparents, even your great grandparents, there's like 3 or 4 generations where stuff is passed down. And this has been proven to be true. And that there's an iceberg living inside of all of us. And most of us are willing to look at the very top layer. We're not willing to go deep. And we got to go deep. It hurts. It's not comfortable, but the more you can do that, unearth those things, part of that being your father wound, then, that's going to be a big moment for every person, because the same thing happens and you're going to repeat the cycle if you don't discover that. And I was doing it with my kids early. I was like coaching t-ball or soccer or something. And I'm like getting ready to start, criticizing them. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's like t-ball. Are you kidding me right now? Like, what are you doing? And then I just made this rule. I said, okay, it's going to be relationship over results. So no matter if you hit a home run or strike out, we're going to get ice cream after the game. It's kind of our principle, right? And that's the same way in life. And I can be critical. I can be hard on my kids. I believe in discipline. I think that's super important today, but yet at the same time, the relationship matters more. And it's about preserving that relationship and protecting it. So like, that's a principle right there, right? Relationship over results. Anyone can take that, but it comes from me knowing my father wound, understanding who I am and some of the identity issues and insecurities that I have as a person. So I think that's super important. The other one I would say is that we have these things called fear buttons, and mine are being invalidated and being controlled. And so when I'm with my in-laws and when I'm around my kids, and that in combination, like it's like a nuclear bomb, because my in-laws can sometimes be controlling. They're great people, but like, you get it, right? They're in-laws. And then my kids will invalidate me in front of them. And it's like the perfect storm for me just to lose my mind. And so like, I've had many bad moments in those circumstances, but I understand those are my fear buttons. So now I'm much better at responding instead of reacting in those moments. And kids are great about invalidating you. I mean, any man, right, doesn't like to be invalidated. We all have ego and pride. I think that's critical. And then the last thing I would say is just, as a man, I also think it's really important to understand, again, your identity and then some of the downsides of your identity, which every man has pride and ego, and that can lead us astray in many areas. And sometimes that pride and ego goes back to full circle, the first thing we talked about, which is working 80 hours a week to try to be successful, because it's about that ego. It's that pride you get stroked there, where at home, it may not be getting the same accolades and it doesn't feel the same. And you're not closing those deals because it's small little micro wins. And it's like, a death by 1,000 cuts to raise good kids who become great adults. And that's much more difficult. And you're not getting the praise and the accolades and the immediate success metrics that you get in a business deal. Right. And so I think those are all important things. And I could go on forever, but my point is, I also think that for me, a lot of the business world. So if you're a business person, right, if you're working in the marketplace and that's you, this is you, why are we leaving the best things in the workplace and not bringing them home? Why are we bringing the trash home from the workplace into our home? Right. So think about that for a minute. Why do we leave mission, vision, values, goal setting, right? All those things in the workplace, how we organize our time, our calendars, right? I put my daddy-daughter date nights and my time with my boys and family events on my calendar. And those are just like business meetings, right? They don't get missed. They're important. I'm preparing for those things. I'm scheduling and doing my time for Daddy Saturday, make sure I'm ready, I have my idea. It's on my work calendar. And we used to have shared calendars when I was in corporate America. All my colleagues could see that. How cool is that, right? They'd be like, wait, Justin's leaving early today because he's got this. And no one ever said a word. In fact, they were like, I wish I was like you. They just wouldn't do it. And so I think there's things like that too, right? Where we can bring the best of our business world into our home instead of the worst part of that.
Well, what's interesting about that is how much more we are, what's the word, obedient to our corporate life in many ways. So like if you have a boss and they say, okay, you need to be to work at 8:30, you're going to be to work at 8:30. If they say you need this report done, by Wednesday, you're going to get it done by Wednesday. But yet then when it comes to family, many times we're so lackadaisical. It's like, no big deal. If I miss date night, it's all right.
That's true. So very true. And then,
it's so strange how we do that.
Really is. Man, Justin, you've got me thinking so much right now, because these are basic things, simple things that we could do. I mean, 8 to 10 minute devotional, and just taking the kid aside and talking about this, the thing about the invalidation, good night, or the relationship over the results. It goes on and on and on and on. Good night is awesome. I have to ask you this one though, too, because there is a cycle, or at least there's a number of guests that have brought up one thing that have led to a close family as well, because it leads to a lot of time together and working together. And that is the impact of a farm. What can you tell me about that farm? Because Gary was on a ranch, I was on a farm, and I was sheltered. I was a little guy, but I just remember so many things about farm. I'm wondering what are some lessons from the farm?
Oh my goodness. So we lived in Charleston, South Carolina for 6.5 years, right? I was 3 miles literally from my home to the sand. And, we took advantage of the beach. We were surfing all the time. It was great. We lived where people vacationed. And that was also a challenge. And as we looked at our family and the trajectory of where our kids were going and kind of the vision I saw for them in the future, I was like, this is just not the life that I thought that's what we wanted, but it wasn't, right? And so we had this really unique opportunity, moved south of Nashville onto this farm. We've got about 17 acres, and we started doing Highland cows. I saw Chip Gaines. He posted this picture with a Highland cow and a new calf, and it said new life on the farm. And I'm like, I want one of those. We had 5 acres that was fenced in our front, and my wife was like, you're crazy. And so I bought a painting of a Highland cow and put it in our mantle in the new home that we had. And we called it Rocket. We named him Rocket. And I said, I'm going to have a Rocket one day. And so she starts looking into this, and she's actually like, this is really cool. We could do this. They're used for breeding and hobby farms. And you actually can make really good money in passive income, and it's active passive income. And so we started doing Highland cows, and we got up to 20. We now have 15. We've sold 5. And for every one that we sell, we donate one to our ministry in Kenya called Daddy Saturday Kenya. And so we buy a cow for a family over there, which is life-changing for them. So it also became part of our ministry and who we are. But the lessons learned on the farm are invaluable. I mean, the hard work, the discipline, the determination. If you ask my kids today, would you go back to the beach? They say, tomorrow, please. They would love that. But yet they're learning, and I'm watching them grow. And there's nothing better than seeing my son, Blaine, who's my oldest boy. He loves to take things apart. And so he'll be out there tinkering with something, and he knows how to deal with the engines and equipment way better than I do. I go to him if I need something, and he's got YouTube as an assistant, but he's amazing. And that only came from being on this farm, right? If they treat their mom like crap, I'm like, go shovel cow crap. You can only do that on the farm, right? The discipline levels. We've got the Punisher, we call it, and it's one of those the mowers that's just it's like the rotary blade, and you gotta push the thing. So they have to go do the Punisher if they're disrespectful, right? And go out there and do that. So there's cool things like that, and then just the memories and the moments, and we're become so much closer as a family, because you have to be intentional to have people over or go somewhere else, and if people come over, they're there for a long time. But it's not like you can just walk over to your neighbor, or the kids are riding a bike around the neighborhood. There's distance between the houses. And so it's also made us very close as a family and as a unit. And I'm so thankful for that. And we've also chosen to homeschool our kids the last 2 years. And so that's part of that too. And I would say to those, again, like the intentionality piece, it's really hard, really hard. And there's so many moments where it's interruptions in my day, or I lose focus, or I gotta, go deal with something. And yet, like, the time that I have with my kids, the proximity, it's invaluable. And they're in the home for such a short time. So, farm life has been great. It's caused us to reframe the way we look at our family. We've come much closer, the discipline, the ways that we were able to help our kids grow in their character, and just them seeing so many things that you can only see in a farm. It's helped our talks with sex ed. Like
I bet.
Probably way before we were ready to have them, but it's great. And we love that. We cherish it. And, I think the other thing too is, again, far more is caught than taught. And so somebody's got to do it. And sometimes, a lot of times it's me, and dad's got to do it. Maybe dad's the only that can do it, but yet, like, they come and they help, or they see me sacrificing and working hard and getting up early and doing the things, because the farm never stops. And I've got like 5 other jobs, right? And so, like, you're doing all this, and I know that they're catching that, they're seeing that work ethic is being ingrained in them.
That is awesome. Matter of fact, it brought up, Gary, you remember when we interviewed Jason Brown back there? So this guy left the NFL to go start a farm. He felt inspired to go start a farm that he donates all the produce to people. And we got to introduce you to that guy. I think there'd be some awesome synergies there.
For sure.
Yeah. Oh, there's another thing that really hit me as well, is you are incredibly passionate about helping people share their stories. And it's obvious with the interviews that I've seen and with the people that you have communicated with. But how has that led? What kind of doors has that opened for you? It might seem like an elementary question, but that passion is not an easy passion to have, right? Just sharing those stories, because that's what we try to do too. And there is a great art to it. Even though it is a passion, there's so many amazing things that we learn in the process too. But anyway, take it away.
It's actually a phenomenal question. And it's become my opening question when I meet someone, right? I never ask what they do. I might ask where they're from, but very quickly it turns into, what's your story? And, I let them take that where they want it to go. Sometimes I'm praying, like, please don't take me back to when I was born, and like, this is going to be a long one. But, that I believe everybody has a story worth sharing, right? Everybody has life lessons that they've learned that are worthy of sharing with someone else, regardless of their title, status, or income, right? And so for me, it's great because it's allowed me to have deep relationship and get into really meaningful conversations with people at every level very quickly. It's also opened the doors to some incredible people at incredible levels that I never imagined I would know or be friends with or have access to, including Hall of Fame. I just literally, before this call, was with Anthony Munoz, doing a Zoom call, Hall of Fame lineman for the Bengals, and talking about our Fatherhood Festival coming up in 2 weeks in Canton, Ohio at the Hall of Fame. And I've got access to these people that it all comes from a shared story, learning their story, commonality in stories. And it also helps me get into the conversation around fatherhood, because everybody has a father story, right? And so I think it's super important. And then, from a publishing perspective, it's one form of helping people get their story out and communicate it to the world. And so I love doing that. It's so much fun in that process of helping somebody write and publish their book. And, there's extreme just joy and excitement when somebody does that. It's a big accomplishment. It's a big deal. And so that's great. And then, now the new media company, we're going to help people share their stories in all sorts of different facets and different types of media to get more of these stories out in the world that are the positive, wholesome, fulfilling stories. And so it's become a passion of mine is helping people do that. And that's one way that we make impact, right? Is using the power of story to get in front of people, to draw people in, and to make life change.
I love it. You're an amazing kind of individual that just, it gets me amped.
and good at that.
Oh yeah, this is fantastic words of wisdom, but also so many simple principles that once I know that there's a couple of them that I have already written down. That's why I've been looking down a lot and jotting things down, because it's going to be simple to implement some of these. But one that hit me most profoundly today was putting it in the schedule, in the calendar, so that it is completely blocked time. A very simple thing, but man, I can see some amazing works. And now I'm going to also have a bet on with my kids. I'm going to set the example first. I got to get off the computer. If I'm going to ask you to do that, I got to do the same. Doggone it.
Well, and so Mo, two things around that, right? I think there are also just quick tips that everybody can implement. So one is with your kids, especially, help them become creators, not consumers, right? And try and flip the model so that it's 20% consumption, 80% creation. Right? I've helped my kids start businesses. My daughter's got an online store called Cowgirl Social. She does like country western themed clothing and party dresses and stuff, and helps young girls identify their worth beyond what the world tells them through her store and what she's doing. And so she's on social media, but she's using it not perfectly, but she's using it more to create and to gain content and to do research, and so it's super important, right? Or make connections. And so I think there's ways that you can do that with your kids, and that's super important. So, for me, I'm fine. If you want to use technology, you can use it. It's a tool like anything else, right? It's like money. Money itself is not bad. It's the love of money that's bad, or how you use the money. And so, or how you make the money. And so it's like anything else. So technology, I'm not anti-technology by any means. I'm not saying that. And I don't think that anybody should be, because there is a great tool. Like ChatGPT is great to an extent, but like can also go overboard. So everything, it's just how do you define, what is good and what is not, and what's that line, and you have to put that in place. The other one is for those that are listening that are, most families are dual working today, and you got a lot of people that have side hustles and multiple side hustles and entrepreneur, husband and wives. And I would say one of the things that changed the game for my wife and I is we found a lot of our, her being in business and being an entrepreneur, and me too, is we'd have these date nights, and it's like business date night all the time. All we just talk about business. And then we're looking at each other like we're like roommates. We're standing shoulder to shoulder, and we're so good at that, right? We both have the shovels in our hand, and we're out there making it happen. And we're not face to face like we need to be in relationship as husband and wife, right? And growing in that, and the romance and all the things that come with it. And so we have a business date night and a date night. And the business date night is what it is. It's business. Like we sit down and we'll go out to dinner, or we'll do it at the house after the kids go to bed, and we'll have a meal or whatever, but we'll just sit down and it's all business. And we try to save the big things, we have those conversations, and we make those decisions, and we work through that. And it really helped cut down on the, oh, hey, by the way, or let's talk about this now, and because it's urgent, but it's really not. And it's all business. And then the date nights now are, talking about the vision for the future and our family and our kids and our love for each other and all the stuff that's really super important as a couple. And it really, really helped. And it's like, no business talk. And we honor that. We hold each other accountable to it.
Man, so profound. And I could literally talk to you for hours here.
Listen, really all based on my mistakes, Mo. That's what I'm saying. Early on, you're making me feel. I'm like, the only reason why is because I'm just faster at failing. And so I've gotten there so much faster. And then I'm good at cataloging it and flipping it and saying, hey, here's what worked for me. I think it could work for you too.
Oh man. Well, before we conclude, Gary, again, you have that pursed lip now. What, any last thoughts that you have there?
No, I agree with you, Justin. I think it's so important that it's through sharing our successes and our failures that we really help other people out. And I know that's the case in my life as well. Is so much of what I have to pass on to my kids is where I've failed and where I've fallen flat on my face, and realize that, so anyway, I really do appreciate your words, and I am grateful for the time that you spent with us. It's been amazing.
Thank you, guys.
It's been fantastic. And again, well, and before we do close it out, stick on the line for just a second, okay?
We'll do that.
Thank you for your time. It was pure joy, pure pleasure, and I learned so much.
Well, thank you guys. And I so appreciate it. And I would just say, if people want to connect with me, the best way to do is on LinkedIn @Justin Batt. Find me there. message me, connect with me. I'm always happy to share, and I try to make time for everybody that reaches out regardless. And I'm happy to do that. So, please do that. And just thank you guys for your time and having me on the show. I really appreciate it. Stay intentional.
Thank you.